Today in this video, we are going to build this Airbnb clone using HTML and Tailwind CSS. So building such clones not only help you improve your HTML and CSS skills, but can also act as a great addition to your resume as a beginner. So if you have a basic understanding of HTML and vanilla CSS, that's really great. It will help you navigate through the video very easily. But even if you don't and you're new to it, then don't worry, I'll explain everything along the way. And it's always a good idea to learn via building projects. So let's get started. So before actually start working on the project, please ensure that you have Node.js and Visual Studio Code downloaded in your machine, because we will primarily be using Visual Studio Code as our editor for this project. If you don't have them already, don't worry. I'll give these links in the description box down below. You can download from there. So once these are downloaded, we'll head on to create our project. So I'll go to my terminal, and here I'm going to navigate to my downloads folder, and within it I've created a projects folder. Here I will make the directory and call it Airbnb Clone HTML CSS. So this is done. Now we will not be using this terminal, but we'll be using the Visual Studio Code terminal. So let's go to Visual Studio Code and open up this project that we have just created. So now I'm in my Visual Studio Code. Here I'm going to open this folder that I've just created within my downloads and project. So here it is. Here you can just open the terminal. Now first we will initialize this project. So for initializing, I'll use the command npm init-y. So this will create this package.json file. Now the next thing that we are going to do is we are going to create a public folder in which we are going to keep our HTML and CSS file. So let's first create the index.html file. So for creating a basic HTML file, what you can do is there is a shortcut in Visual Studio Code. You can simply write exclamation and hit enter. So this is a boilerplate HTML code that Visual Studio Code provides. And here we will change the title to Airbnb Clone. Okay, once this is done, the next step is to install Tailwind. So for installing Tailwind, we are going to use the Tailwind documentation, because I also don't remember all the steps by heart. Okay, so here let's open up the documentation, which is tailwindcss.com, and go within docs. So the first step in the installation process is to install Tailwind CSS via npm. So let's copy this and write this here. So this is basically going to install this in our package.json file. So once this is downloaded, you would be able to see this Tailwind CSS, and the version that we are currently using is 3.3.3. So the next step that we have to take is we have to create our tailwind.config.js file, which will contain all the configuration related to Tailwind. So let me copy this one and again paste it here. This is going to create a new file within our directory. So yes, this is tailwind.config.js file that is created. As the next step, we have to add the path of all the files in which we are going to use Tailwind. So let's copy this one, and we need to keep this in our content. So as I've told previously also, that we are going to keep all our HTML CSS file in our public folder. So instead of source, here I will write public and save it. As the next step, we need to create this input.css file within a source folder and paste these 3 lines. I'll tell you what these 3 lines mean, but before that, let's copy these and create a new folder, call it source, and I will create a new file, call it input.css, and paste these 3 lines. So let me explain you what these mean. So this @Tailwind is nothing but a directive. If you don't know what directive is, directive simply means a special command or an instruction that tells the tool what it needs to do. So here we are telling the CSS processor to include the Tailwind's base components and utility styles to our CSS. So that's what we are trying to achieve with this one. Let's hit on save. The next step is we need to run the CLI tool to scan the template file for classes and build your SCSS. First, let's paste this one. So what this is going to do is it's basically build our CSS file in our folder, whatever folder we want. It's going to take the input from input.css file. That's why we have written -i and given the path of the input.css file, and as an output in our say public folder, we want to create a file and we will call it style.css, which will contain all the styles saved in base, component and utility provided by Tailwind. So in our style.css file that gets generated, we have our base styles that are applied. Apart from that, if we specify any manual components in our input.css file, that also gets reflected. And then after that, whatever utilities we are using in our index.html file, that also gets reflected. So this looks good. Okay, now the last step that is left is to include the CSS file in our index.html file. So I'll go to my index.html file and include this here. I'll give the right path, so it's style.css, and click on save. So our basic setup is done. We have created the project, we have installed Tailwind. Now is the time to start building the project. So let's have a look at Airbnb first. So this is how the Airbnb website looks like. If we have a look at it clearly, there is a header section up to this point. And then there are hotel images that are shown, and then after that there is a footer. So we'll divide our whole project into 3 parts. One is the header, the second is the main content, and third is the footer. And within the header we have 3 categories. One is this navbar, the second is this category bar, and third is the price bar. So according to it, we'll start building it. So let's first write these in our index.html file. So within body, I'll create 3 tags. One is the header tag. The second is going to be the main section. And the third is going to be a footer. Okay. And within header, as I've told, there is going to be a navbar. Let me comment this out. And then there is a category bar. And after that, there is going to be a price bar. Okay. And within main, we are going to have all the hotel information. So let me write hotel here. Okay, this looks great. So let's start building the navbar. If we have a look at it, the whole navbar is divided into 3 sections. In the first section, we have a Airbnb logo. In the second one, we have an element in which we have 3 buttons. One is for anywhere, the second is for any week, third is for add guest, and also an icon of search. In the third one, we have a text, an icon of globe, and also a profile section in which we have again 2 things, a bar icon and also a profile. So if I ask you, what would you use? Would you use flex for it or would you use grid? I would say I would go for grid because I can clearly see that if I use 3 columns in the grid, I would be able to align these items very nicely. So I would go for grid. You can also try using flex and see how it goes. We need some images in here like the Airbnb logo, hotel images, and also some icons. So for the images, I've already kept them in my project folder within static folder. I'll give the GitHub link of this project as well. So if you want to use the same images, you can download it from there. Then for the icons, I'll tell you what we are going to use. But before that, let's create a div in which we'll have a class of grid. If you're thinking from where I'm getting this drop down, so for that I have downloaded an extension of Visual Studio Code which is called Tailwind CSS Installation. And whenever you start using it, whatever you want to achieve, it will give you a drop down of the options that it has related to it. So it's really a good tool to have in your Visual Studio Code while you're using Tailwind. Then I'm going to give it a grid call of 3. So if you hover on it, you would be able to see that in vanilla CSS how this would be achieved. And that's the beauty of Tailwind CSS. You don't have to write this big line. You just can achieve the same thing with grid calls 3. Within it, we are going to have 3 sections. In the first one, we have an image. I'll define the image later. Then I have 2 more divs, one for the middle section, and for the last section. Now let's add the image. So for the image, I have kept this in my static folder that is called Airbnb logo. I'll keep the alt as blank. The second one will have a class of flex because I want to align those items in a horizontal manner. And I'll have 3 buttons. The first button would be anywhere. The second button have a text of any week. And the third one has add guest. And also we have an icon. So for the icons, we'll be using Font Awesome icon library and also material icon symbols from Google. So let me show you those. So this Font Awesome library provides you really good icons, but unfortunately not all of them are free. So that's why we'll be using a combination of this and material icons. So before using them, we'll have to import them in our project. So I'll go to CDN.js of Font Awesome, and here I will get the CDN link. I'll copy this and paste it in my head. Again, similarly for the material icon, you can select any icon and then copy this line and paste it over here. Okay, I don't want these extra configurations, so I'll delete this one, and now we are good to go. We are ready to use the icons that are available in Font Awesome and material icon. So let's first search for the search icon in Font Awesome. Let me search this icon called as search. Yep, this magnifying glass is freely available. I just have to click on it and it gets copied. I'll paste it here. And then in the last div, we'll have a class of flex for the same reason as the middle section. And within it, we'll have a button of Airbnb your home. Also this globe. Well, let's search if it is freely available in Font Awesome. I'll write globe here. Unfortunately, this unfilled version is in Pro, so let's search it in material symbol. I'll write globe. And this one is freely available. I just have to copy this and paste it over here. The last one is again a div which has a class of flex because they are horizontally aligned, and the first one is the bar icon that I want. Let me search bar here. Yep, this one is available for free. Let me copy it and paste it over here. The second one is, I would say it's a button. So let me keep this as E and save. Let's see how this looks like. So for having a look at it, you can just right click and click on open with live server. If this option is not available, that means you don't have an extra extension available in your Visual Studio Code, which is called live server. So you can download it and then you would be able to see that option that I'm just showing you. So let me right click on it and click on open with live server. So this is how our navbar looks like. We have all the elements available, but they are not aligned properly. So we have to add some CSS to it. So let's first play around with this logo. Let's give it a proper height and width. Let's add a class and give it a height of say around 16 and a width of around 28. If you don't know what this means, so 16 in Tailwind would be multiplied by 4 and it will give you a height in pixels. And if you divide it by 4, it will give you the height in rems. So you can see here it is 4 rem, which is equivalent to 64 pixels. Similarly, for width as 28, it's around 112 pixels. Okay, then save it. Let's see. Yes, it's looking much better. Now let's start styling this one. The second div that we have. So we have given it a class of flex, but we want that all the items should have equal spacing, equal horizontal spacing between them. So I'll give it a class of justify evenly, which gives justify content as space evenly. And we also want to align them vertically as well. So I'll give it items as center, then save. Let's see. Yes, it's better. Now, if you see here, this whole element has a border as well as a shadow, and in between these buttons we have these pipes. Along with that, this magnifying glass has a background of red. So let's add that. Let me add a border to it and give it a rounded full property. to give it a good border radius and give it a shadow of medium. Save. Then this one is looking better, but still the height is not appropriate. So I'll give it a height of around 12, which is 48 pixels, and a width of 384 pixels. Yes, it's better. Then let's add the background to our background red. I think 500 should be good, and give it a text color which is white. Save it. Okay, it's not rounded and there needs to be some padding, so let me give it this as rounded full and a padding of say 2. Save it. Yes, this is fine, but now we need to also add those pipes and add some styling to our buttons. So for this, let's give it a class of border at the right, and I'll give it 2, and the text is pretty small, and I'll give the font weight as medium. I'll add the same class to my NEV because there was a line there as well, and for the last one I'll give it a, like the size would be same, there won't be any right border, but there is text which is gray. I'll give it say 500 and save it. Okay, this is looking fine, but it needs to have some padding, so let's add a padding from left and right as 4, and give it padding here as well, and give it some padding here too. Let's see. Yes, it's looking fine. Now let's move ahead and go to the last section. Here we have given it a class of flex. Let me just justify it to end because I want to have them horizontally towards the end and have these items in the center because I want to vertically align them, and all those elements have some gaps, so I'll give it a gap of 32 pixels and save. Okay, this is fine, but if you see in our Airbnb website we have some padding from left and right, so we need to add that as well. So here I'll give it a padding of around say 16 and see. Yes, it's better. Now let's add some CSS to the profile section. Let me also give this font medium and text small class to our Airbnb or home button as well. Globe symbol is fine, we don't have to add some CSS to it. Then the last is the profile section. I'll just want them to have even space, and I want them to be in the center, and also there is a gap between them. I can give them a rounded full property, give it a border, and give it a shadow as well. Save it. Okay, this is fine, but we also need to give it a height and a width. So let's give it a height of 10 and a width of say 20. Save it. Yes, now it's better. Let's also add that background to this E. So I'll give it a class of background black. The text is gonna be white and it is in a circular manner, so I'll give it rounded full, and the text is going to be in the center. Let's save it and see. Okay, we need to give it a width and a height so that this rounded full property works properly. So I'll give it a width of say 7 and a height of 7. Save it. Yeah, it's looking much better, but if you see here, there is a difference. The padding from the left is bit higher than the padding from the right, and the padding from top and bottom is same. So in this div, like the outer div will have to add some padding manually. So I'll give it a padding of 1.25 from top and bottom, and then from the padding right it will be around the same, but from the left I want more padding, so I'll give it a padding of 3 and save. Yes, it's much better. And here I can also reduce the text size of this one to say 10 pixels. Now you'll be thinking why I have written in this manner. Let me go to the text section of our documentation. I would say font size. So here we have 14 pixels and 12 pixels. What if we want to have a font size of 10 pixels? For that, I have to navigate to my arbitrary value, and here you can see that if I want to use any arbitrary value, I have to give them within the square brackets. So that's why I've given it in this way, and let me also give it a font of the semibold. Save. Okay, it's better. I think I've given the left padding a bit more. Let me give it around 8 pixels. Save it. Yes. But we also need to add some CSS to our whole navigation bar. Like there is bottom border, there is specific height, and all the items are vertically aligned. So for doing that, let me give this a width of screen, a height of 20, a border at the bottom, which would be, I don't want 2 pixels, I want around 1 pixel, which is not available. So I will write it in this manner, and I want items to be in the center, and save it. Okay, congratulations, our navigation bar is ready and it's looking very similar to what we have in the Airbnb website. Now let's start building this category bar, and see how it goes. So if we have a look at this category bar, this whole category bar is divided into 3 parts. One is a list of categories, the second is this icon, the third is the filter option, and within filter we have an icon and a filters text, right? So if we are able to make this one category, we would be able to replicate it same for the rest as well, right? So I'll create an outer div which will have a class of flex, and I want items to be in the center. Within it, I'll have a div which will take care of all the categories that I have. So I'll give it a class of flex, and I'll keep the items in the center, and within it I'll have another div which is for the individual category, right? So I want to have it in a flex, but the flex direction is going to be column, since they are kept in a vertical manner. I'll have an image inside it. I'll keep the alt as empty, and then a text. Okay, and once this is completed, this div is completed, I'll have an icon. So that is, what is this icon? This is a circular arrow. Let's search this in font awesome icon. Circle arrow. Do you have any circle arrow? This one would work, but it's in a pro version. Let me search this in here. Arrow circle pointing to the right. Yes, I have this. I can use this one for now. That's fine. Copy this and paste it over here. I'll make another div for the filter. So I have an icon in there again, which is the filter one. So let me search for this. Yes, I think this will do. So I'll just copy this, paste it over here. Then apart from that, I also need a text, right? Which is called filters. Great, let's save it and see. So if we go here, we have these two things. I think I forgot to add a class of flex. Okay, now let's start building our category. So for the first category, let's add the image from the static folder, and I've kept all of these images starting from type 1 till type 12. So I'll keep the type 1, and then I will give it a name of amazing pools. Save it. Okay, yeah, these I think this is the one that we want, and we'll replicate the same for other categories as well. But first, let's add some CSS to the first category, because we'll add the similar CSS to other categories as well, right? So let's give this image a class. I'll have to adjust the size of this image, so I'll give it a height of say 6 and a width of 6, and save it. Now, okay, this is fine, but the text is not appropriate. So let me give this a class. I'll give it a text of extra small, and I think the font weight can be normal, which is 400. So yeah, this is good. But I think all of these flex call needs to be vertically aligned, and I will give it a text of gray so that the text that is there in the p tag should have this, but when we hover on it, it should turn black, right? So for that I can simply write hover and give it a text of black and save. So let's see, if we hover on it, it's turning its color to black. Since the image is in a PNG or JPEG format, I'm not able to change the color of it, but if you're able to get the SVG of it, you would be able to add this hover option on the overall div as well, right? Let me first give this a height of say around 96 pixels, and space between the elements in the x-axis would be around 5, and save. Okay. Yeah, now we have a space as well, and if you see here, there is no gap, vertical gap between these elements, so I'll give it a gap of 2 and save. Yes, okay, this is better. There is also a space from the left if we have a look here, so let's give it a padding from the left. This is only given for the first category that we have. You did not give it for the rest of the categories. Yeah, that's fine. So let me add some other categories as well. I've already written the code for it, so I'll just save it and see. Okay, these are fine, but the problem is there is no spacing between them. That can be solved very easily. So let me give it a justify center and also some space on the x-axis, say 8. Let me refresh this. Yes, it's looking better, but why they are not appearing here? Let me figure that out. I just had some extra divs that I've removed. So now it's looking close to what we want, but we also need to add some CSS to these two things as well. So let's start doing that. For this arrow circle right, I'll give it a padding from the left of around 16 pixels so that it's a bit away. Yes. And then within this div, the last div that is for the filter, I'll give it a justify around and also keep these items in the center. I'll give the rounded as XL since I don't want to have a circular one but have a good border radius of around 12 pixels. I can give it a shadow of medium and save it. Okay, this looks fine, but I need to add some padding and also give it some height. So let's give it the height of 12, a width of say 24, and also give it a border. Okay. But I think I can, if I compare it with this, I can give more gap between the elements. So I can increase this gap to say 10. Now let's add some CSS to our filters as well. Okay. So the last one is this one. Let me add a padding to it from the left so that it's not really very stick to the border. And then for the filter text, I'll give it a text of small, or I think XS should be good, and font of medium, and save it. Okay, there needs to be some padding from the right. So I'll give the padding as 2 and save. Yes, perfect. So if we compare this, we have the category bar ready and also the navigation bar ready. Now let's start working on the last section of our header, that is this price bar. So for this price bar, we'll create an outer div which will take care of aligning this whole item in the center of the page, the horizontally center, and then inside it we'll have another div which will take care of these items in one and this toggle button as another one. So there will be a div which will take care of these two text and a pipe in between, and there will be another div which will take care of this icon, right? So let's start building that. For this, I will create one div, an outer one, which will have a class of flex, and this will have a justify center property so that it's aligned in the center, and save. And inside it, I'll create another div which will have a class of flex, and you can see there is a space in between these two. So I'll give it this class justify between, and within it I'll have one div which will take care of the two texts that we have. So I'll give it a class of again flex and justify it to start. because this flex will start from the very beginning of the entire div. And inside it, I'll have two text. One would be display total price. So I'll write display total price, and the second one is includes all fees before taxes. Includes, right? And then we have an icon, that is the toggle one. I want an off one, so let me search for toggle off. Yes, it's available here. Let me insert this icon and save it. Let's see. Okay, display total price, this. I just need to add some CSS, but overall it looks fine, right? So let's add some CSS to it. So here, let's first have some CSS in the outer div, which will take care of the inside items. So I'll give it a border, just like how similarly we have given the border to the above elements as well, and give it a rounded off XL since it's not rounded completely, and give it a width of say around 600 pixels since we don't have a width of beyond 96 in Tailwind. So for giving the arbitrary value, I'm giving it a width of 600 pixel in a square bracket and give it a height of say 16 and save. Okay, this is fine, but I think there is a problem. We need to vertically align these. So I'm giving it this and a padding of say around 4. Save. Yes, this looks fine. So this overall box is now fine, but we need to now add some CSS to the inside div. So I've written flex start, that's fine. Let me add some CSS to this. So I want a border at the right, so I'll give border right of 2, and I will also give the color to the border. This is optional. If you don't want it, you can leave it. And then there is a padding from the right that I want to give around 4. I'll give the text as base and font weight to be medium and save. Yes, this is fine. Now I need to add some CSS to this one. So I want to have the text color of it as gray, right? And also there needs to be some space here. So I'll give it a padding of left as 4. I'll give it a text of gray, I think 400 should be good, and give it a text of base. Save it. Yes, this looks perfectly fine. Okay, so we are very close. We have completed the header section of our whole website. Now it's time to work on the main section in which we have hotel image. So if we have a look at this main section, this whole main section only contains hotel images and all of them looks the same. It's just that their image is different and the text is different. And if we have a look at individual hotel, we have an image and then we have some text. And in the first line of the text, we have a rating as well. So I'll create certain divs. In the outer div, I'll create a grid and have the columns as 4. We can create as many number of rows we want. And then inside another div, I'll have these list of items. So let's start building that. I'll create a div, give it a class of grid and give the grid columns as 4. Inside this one, I'll have another div individually for all the hotels, and these will have a class of flex. The direction will be column, and then inside it I have an image. Okay, I'll give it a source and alt property, and then I have, for the first text that we have, we need to add another div because we have a rating as well. So I'll give a div, give it a class of flex, and then inside it I'll have a paragraph and a rating. So for the rating I need a star image. Let me search that here. So I need a star. Okay, this one should do. So let me copy this, paste it over here, and apart from that I have a rating. So let's rate it say 5.0. I'm just writing an arbitrary value over here. And apart from that, outside this div we have, I think, 3 more text, right? 1, 2 and 3. One for the distance, another for date, and third for the price. So I'll create 3 more p tags and save. Now let's start filling the information and then we'll have a look at how it is looking like. So In the static folder, I have kept the images as image 1, 2, 3 and 4. I'm going to use the same in all the rows, and then night, right? Save it and see how this looks. So the image is fine, the text is fine. Now we just need to add some CSS and we are good to go. Then we'll replicate the same for the rest as well. It's as simple as that. Okay, so let me start with this one. I want the whole size to be fixed of the hotel image as well as the text that we have. So I'm gonna give it a height of 384 pixels and a width of 72. Save it. Now this is fine. Now let's add a class to this. Let me give the width as same of what we have of the overall div and give it a height of 64. Okay, now this image is looking better. And then I also want this to be rounded XL because here these are rounded, so I have given it a rounded. And then for this flex, I will add this justify between because there is a space between both of these elements in here. Then I will give it a margin from the top as 2. Save. Okay, but they are not, star and 5.0 rating are not kept together, so I'll have to keep them within the same div. Let me remove this from here and keep them in a div which will again have a class of flex. Save. Okay, this is better. Now if we have a look at the text, these two are bold but rest are not bold and they have a different color too. So let's add some CSS to this. I'll give the text as small and font as medium. And then for this, I will give it a class of again the same text small and font will be a bit lighter. So I'll give it light. And then for the 60 kilometers away and 30 July to 4th August, that is the date, they'll have the same text style. So I'll give it a text of small and the color would be gray 400. I'll copy the same for the next one which specifies the date, and for the price I'll keep the text as small and I don't want this color. I'll keep the font as medium and compared with the top ones and a margin from the top. Okay, save. Okay, this looks good, but you can see that there is a margin from the top that we should have left because it's just coming in the same line. And here we have margin from the left and right as well. So let's add that first and then we'll add other images as well that we have. So here I'll give it a class of margin top which will be around 14 and a margin on X that is from left and right of around 10 and save. So if we now have a look, now we have some space and space from here as well. Now let's add some other images as well. I've already written those, so I'm just copying those here. You can write your own so that you have a better understanding of what we are doing it, and if you do it for say 2-3 times you would be good at it. Now let's save it. So now we have some good looking hotels and I've added 3 rows. You can add more, but if it would be React website, I would not have added in a similar manner. I would have written a reusable component, but here since we are just creating an HTML CSS project, so this should be good. So we are good to go, but there is a problem in our project. Everything looks good, we are just left with the footer. But before that, if I show you, if I'm scrolling this, all of the header is moving, but if I'm looking here, only the price bar is moving and rest are kept as fixed. So let's first correct that. So if I go here and go to my top div, here in the navbar I want to make it fixed, so I'll give it a fixed property, position as fixed, and keep the top as 0 and save and see. Okay, here it's fixed, but it don't have a color. I need to give it a background as well. So let me give it a background of say white and save. Now it's fine, but the other one is hiding. So we need to give it a top property and fixed property to our category bar as well. So here I'm going to give this a property of top say 80 pixels and keep it fixed, and again give it a background of white. Save. Now let's see. Okay, but you can see this is not spanning over the whole width of the screen. So I'll need to also add width screen and save. Okay, this looks fine, but our price bar is getting hidden because we have not given it a margin of top. So we also need to give that. So let me give it a margin of say 192 pixels. And then here it is. Now if I'm scrolling, these two are getting fixed, these two header sections are fixed, and only the price one is moving, and also the hotels. So the last but not the least thing that is left is to build this footer. So for this footer, if we have a look at this, if I'm scrolling, it is fixed. Apart from that, I can have a div which can have two more divs, one for the leftmost section and one for the right section, right? And there is a space in between. So let's start building our footer. I'll create two divs. The first div will take care of the leftmost part, so I'll give it a class of flex, and then the other div will take care of the right part, and I'll again give it a class of flex. And the footer can have a class of again flex, but it will have a justify between property, and save. Let's first add the elements that are there, and then we'll add the CSS part. So for adding the elements, I'll keep all of them in the paragraph tag. These things, I can simply copy these from here and then paste it over here. Okay, I'll keep them inside my p tag. Okay, this is done, and then in the next section we have another flex, and in that I will have this globe icon, English IN, INR, support and resources, and so on and so forth. So this globe I've already imported at the top, if you remember. So this is the one that I have. I'll just copy this and paste it over here. Okay, and save it. Let's see how this looks. I'll go to my Airbnb clone and hit refresh. Okay, these are still there, but okay, it's not fixed. We need to give it a height and we need to align these properly. Okay, first let me add a height to it. Let's give it a height of say around 12, and we have given it this. Let me align these to the center and give it a padding from the left and right of around 10, and save. And also we want to fix it, and it's need to be fixed at the bottom, so I'll give it this, and the width to be screen, background to be white. Save. Okay, now it should not move. Yes, it's not moving. The only thing left is to align these items. Okay, for that I have given it a flex. I'll keep the text as small. I'll give the font as base, and space between them should be around 2. Simple. It's looking really very nice. Now the same type of thing we need to do it for the right div. So I've already given it a class of flex. I'll give it a space of 4 because there was more space when compared with the left one. I keep the text as small, but it's a bit bigger from the left one. Text of small and font as medium, and save. Okay, let me go to my Airbnb clone and refresh. Yes, I think we are done. So congratulations, we have successfully built our Airbnb clone, and you could see how easy it was with Tailwind CSS. We didn't have to switch between HTML and CSS files. We didn't have to write the class names, which is really very frustrating. And we have some readily available utility classes that we can use in our project. But you could see that this website is still not responsive. So if you want to learn how to build a responsive website with Tailwind, which is really very easy with Tailwind, I'll make the next video on it. So if you want to learn how to make responsive pages with Tailwind, then stay tuned for the next video. And if you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for more such content in future.